My name is May, and at 32 years old, I never expected to see my parents again after 8 years of complete estrangement. That peaceful Sunday morning changed everything when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Standing there on my mansion doorstep were the two people who had systematically excluded me from every family gathering since I chose my career over their expectations. The shock on their faces when they saw what I had built without them was almost worth all the pain. I opened the door, spoke calmly, and watched the color drain from their faces as they realized just how successful their discarded daughter had become. Before I tell you what happened next, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unexpected reunion played out. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, where everyone knew everyone, and reputation was everything to families like mine. My parents, Thomas and Diane Walker, were pillars of the community. Dad owned the most successful insurance agency in town, and Mom was the perfectionist homemaker who chaired every committee at church. They had very specific ideas about success and how their children should achieve it. My older brother Patrick was exactly what they wanted in a child. He was athletic, charming, popular, and followed every rule they set. From his perfect grades to his football trophies, Patrick never gave them a reason to be disappointed. I, on the other hand, was a mystery to them from day one. While Patrick was out winning games and collecting accolades, I was disassembling computers in my bedroom and teaching myself to code. By the time I was 12, I had built my first basic program. At 14, I was fixing the neighbor's technical problems for pocket money. My parents saw all of this as a strange hobby that would eventually fade away when I found a more appropriate path. The only person who really understood me was my grandmother Eleanor, my dad's mother. She had been a mathematics teacher back when women rarely pursued such careers, and she recognized something in me that my parents couldn't see. When everyone else was telling me to be more social, more normal, more like the other girls, Grandma Eleanor was sneaking me books on programming and telling me stories about pioneering women in science. The first major conflict with my parents came during my senior year of high school. Despite my excellent grades and perfect SAT scores, they had always assumed I would attend the local state college, like Patrick had. They had my future mapped out a teaching degree marriage to a local boy and a house not far from theirs. But I had other plans. My guidance counselor had encouraged me to apply to MIT. When the acceptance letter arrived with a partial scholarship offer, I was ecstatic. My parents were horrified. The argument that followed still rings in my ears sometimes. Dad paced our living room, his face getting redder by the minute. I can still hear him saying, "This family sticks together, May." What kind of daughter chooses some faraway school over being close to the people who raised her? Mom was quieter, but equally devastating. What about your future family men? Don't want to marry women who think they're smarter than everyone else. Their words cut deep, but I stood my ground. This was my one chance to pursue the future I had dreamed about, to be surrounded by people who thought like me, who saw technology as I did a way to change the world. The night before I left for MIT, Grandma Eleanor came to my room. Her arthritis had worsened that year, making each step painful, but she climbed the stairs to see me privately. "Your parents love you," she whispered, "but they can't see past their own fears. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappoint the people you love in order to become the person you were meant to be." She pressed an envelope into my hands. Inside was $5,000, her entire savings. I promised I'd pay her back, but she just smiled. "You already have, by being brave enough to follow your heart." That tearful goodbye with Grandma Eleanor gave me the courage I needed. The next morning, my parents drove me to the airport in tense silence. Mom hugged me stiffly at the security gate, and Dad gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder. "Call when you get there," was all he said. Walking through that airport gate felt like crossing a threshold into a different life. I didn't realize then that I was also walking away from any chance of approval from the people who should have been my biggest supporters. MIT was everything I had hoped for, and more. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't think I was strange for loving code and algorithms. My roommate Ashley became the sister I never had, someone who understood passion and ambition. I thrived academically, joining research projects and hackathons, staying up all night with friends, building prototypes, and debating ethical implications of new technologies. Those first months were also the time I discovered who I was outside my family's expectations. I cut my hair short, developed my own style, and learned that I could be social on my own terms. I found my voice in classroom debates and my confidence in successful projects. The shy, awkward girl from Pennsylvania was blossoming into someone new, someone my parents might not recognize, but someone I was proud to be. Every Sunday I dutifully called home, but the conversations grew increasingly strained. My excitement about a new programming language or successful project was met with Mom asking if I was eating enough or Dad wondering when this phase would pass. They never asked about my classes or achievements, focusing instead on news from home, as if reminding me of what I was missing. By the end of my freshman year, something had shifted. I no longer felt the desperate need for their approval that had followed me my whole life. I was building something new, and if they couldn't be part of it, I would find people who could. My years at MIT passed in a blur of hard work, innovation, and personal growth. While my classmates competed for spots at Google, Apple, and Microsoft, I had different ambitions brewing. During my junior year, I developed an app that streamlined supply chain management for small businesses. What started as a class project quickly gained attention when several local businesses in Cambridge adopted it and saw immediate results. By senior year, I had refined the app and developed a business plan. When graduation approached, I had two paths before me: accept one of the lucrative job offers from tech giants or take a leap of faith on my own venture. The decision terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. When I called my parents to share my post-graduation plans, I hoped that my academic success might have softened their disappointment. I was graduating summa cum laude from one of the most prestigious technology programs in the world. Surely that would count for something. I can still hear the disappointment in Mom's voice. "So you're turning down real jobs to gamble on some app? This isn't like you, May. You've always been such a sensible girl." Dad's reaction was even more cutting. "How are you going to support yourself? These tech bubbles burst all the time. Google would give you benefits security. This is just reckless." No matter how I tried to explain the potential of my company, they couldn't see past the risk. In their world, entrepreneurship wasn't a legitimate career path. It was a phase, a rebellion, something to get out of my system before settling into a proper job. That summer after graduation was the hardest of my life. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Boston that I could barely afford. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, working 18-hour days, refining my product. Every penny from my savings went into the business. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if my parents were right, if I was throwing away my future on an impossible dream. But I persisted. I attended every networking event I could find, pitched to anyone who would listen, and slowly built connections in the startup community. 6 months after graduation came my first breakthrough. A venture capital firm specializing in women-led tech startups took interest in my company now, called SupplySync. Their investment of $200,000 was modest by industry standards, but life-changing for me. That first funding round coincided with my brother Patrick's wedding. After months of minimal contact with my family, I flew back to Pennsylvania, hoping that my small success might finally earn their respect. I bought a new dress, practiced talking about my company in terms they might understand, and prepared myself for reconciliation. The reality was crushing. At the rehearsal dinner, Mom introduced me to her friends as her daughter, who's just working with computers in Boston. When one guest asked about my company, Dad jumped in with, "It's a little hobby business she's trying. Patrick will be taking over my insurance agency next year. That's the real family business." Throughout the wedding weekend, my achievements were systematically minimized. Conversations about my work were redirected to topics my parents deemed more appropriate. The final blow came during Patrick's wedding toast, when he thanked our parents for teaching him family values and putting family first, a clear dig at my choice to move away. The only bright spot that weekend was meeting Jackson Carter. He was a college friend of Patrick's, but unlike most people there, he seemed genuinely interested in my work. When I explained SupplySync, his eyes lit up with understanding. He asked insightful questions and shared stories from his own experience in venture capital. By the time I flew back to Boston, I had Jackson's card and a dinner invitation. I also had a renewed determination to succeed, if only to prove my family wrong. The next months saw SupplySync growing steadily. I hired my first 2 employees, both women engineers met at MIT. We moved into a small office space, celebrated our first 10 clients, and began developing additional features. Jackson and I started dating, his belief in me and my vision a constant source of strength. He understood the technology world in a way my family never could, and his support came without conditions. As my business grew, so did the tension with my family. Our phone calls became less frequent, more strained. I sent them articles when SupplySync was mentioned in tech publications, but they never acknowledged them. I shared our milestones, but they changed the subject to news about people from home I barely remembered. When I landed a major client, a retail chain with 50 locations across New England, I called my parents, immediately bursting with pride. Dad's response was, "That's nice, honey, but have you thought about what happens if it fails? Maybe you should have a backup plan." I stopped sharing my successes after that. If they couldn't celebrate with me, I would find people who could. I was building not just a company, but a new life one, where my worth wasn't measured by how well I conformed to others' expectations. The distance between us grew a small crack, widening into a chasm. I didn't realize then how soon that chasm would become unbridgeable. The real breaking point came about 2 years after graduation. SupplySync had secured a contract with a major national retailer, the kind of client that put us firmly on the map in our industry. That same week, Jackson surprised me with keys to a new apartment, a real upgrade from my starter studio, with an actual bedroom and a small office space. Life was coming together in ways I had barely dared to dream. I decided to call my parents and share the good news, hoping that this more substantial success might finally change their perspective. The call went to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound casual while bursting with pride about the new contract. 3 days later, I still hadn't heard back. Concerned, I tried again, this time reaching my mother. "Oh, we've been so busy, May. Your cousin's graduation party was this weekend, and then we had the family reunion at the lake house. Everyone was asking about you." I froze. Family reunion? No one had mentioned any reunion to me. "What reunion?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "The annual summer gathering. I thought your father told you." Must have slipped his mind with all the planning. Her tone was light, dismissive, but something felt wrong. Dad never forgot details, especially about family events he prized so highly. That night, I made the mistake of checking social media. There they all were, my parents, brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, smiling by the lake house that had been in our family for generations. 3 generations gathered together, with one conspicuous absence: me. The photos showed them engaged in familiar traditions: the big family barbecue, the swimming races, Grandma Eleanor's birthday cake. She shared her birthday with the reunion weekend. Traditions I had participated in every summer of my life until leaving for MIT. I called my father directly, my hands shaking with hurt and anger. "It was an oversight, May," he said, his voice tight. "We assumed you'd be too busy with your important company to come all the way home for a family weekend." The lie was so transparent, it made my chest ache. This wasn't an oversight, it was a punishment. Christmas came a few months later, and I decided to make one more attempt at reconciliation. I flew home with gifts and good intentions, determined to bridge the growing gap. I brought Jackson, hoping his charm and conventional career might help my parents see me in a new light. The first day was strained, but manageable. Mom fussed over Jackson, clearly relieved I had found someone so normal. Dad made polite conversation about the economy and sports. We carefully avoided any mention of my company or the summer reunion I hadn't been invited to. On Christmas Eve, the facade cracked. After several glasses of eggnog, Dad started talking about Patrick's promotion at the insurance agency. "Now that's a son who understands family loyalty," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Didn't run off to chase some pipe dream. He's building something real, something that will last." I took a deep breath. "My company is real too, Dad. We're projected to double our revenue next year." He waved his hand dismissively. "Tech bubbles burst, May. When it does, don't expect to come running back here for help." Mom jumped in, her smile tight. "May has always been so independent, too independent sometimes. Not every girl needs a career to be fulfilled. Patrick and Stephanie are talking about starting a family soon, and she has a degree too, but she understands what really matters." Jackson squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support, as my family continued to dismiss everything I had worked for. Later, when Patrick arrived, he sided with my parents, suggesting that perhaps I should apologize for putting my career first. "If you just showed more interest in family matters, they wouldn't feel so abandoned," he said, as if I were the problem. That night I cried in the guest bedroom, Jackson holding me, as I finally accepted a painful truth. My family would never celebrate my success because it came on terms they didn't approve of. Their love was conditional on my compliance with their vision for my life. The next morning we left early, cutting our visit short. I couldn't bear another day of subtle jabs and dismissals. As we drove away from the house, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the daughter desperate for approval. I was a woman who had built something valuable, surrounded by people who recognized my worth. Back in Boston, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. If my blood family couldn't be my support system, I would create a new one. My small team became increasingly important to me, our office, a place of acceptance and shared purpose. Throughout the next year, the pattern continued. I wasn't invited to Easter, to my cousin's wedding, to Thanksgiving. Each exclusion hurt less than the last as I grew accustomed to the reality of my situation. The final blow came when Grandma Eleanor's health began to decline. She had been my champion, my secret ally, but even she couldn't bridge the growing divide between me and my parents. Our phone calls became less frequent as her energy waned. When she entered hospice care, I dropped everything to fly back to Pennsylvania. In her final days, she held my hand weakly and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, May. You found your path. Don't let anyone make you feel small for that." She passed away 3 days later. At the funeral, my parents were cold, their grief creating an additional barrier between us. The final severance came when the will was read. Despite our close relationship, Grandma Eleanor had left her modest savings to my brother. I later learned my parents had convinced her that I didn't need the inheritance because my business was doing well enough. What hurt wasn't the money, but the manipulation, the way they had inserted themselves between me and the one family member who had truly supported me. After a tense confrontation at the lawyer's office, where my father accused me of only caring about the inheritance, I made a decision. I blocked their numbers, removed them from my social media, and walked away completely. The family that had raised me was now firmly in my past. It was time to focus entirely on my future. The next 2 years were transformative, both professionally and personally. Without the emotional drain of trying to win my family's approval, I channeled all my energy into growing SupplySync. We expanded from our small Boston office to a proper headquarters with 20 employees. Our client list grew to include major retailers across the country, and our software evolved to include innovative features that set us apart from competitors. Through a tech conference in San Francisco, I met Sofia Martinez, a pioneering woman in software development who had built and sold 2 successful companies. She took an interest in my work and gradually became the mentor I desperately needed. Our weekly video calls became a highlight. I looked forward to her guidance, extending beyond business strategy to personal growth. "When I tell you about your family," Sophia told me, "after I shared my story, I recognized the pattern. My own parents couldn't understand why their daughter wouldn't be content as a teacher or nurse. Sometimes the people who should support us most can't see past their own limitations. That's not your failure, it's theirs." Her words were a balm to wounds I hadn't realized were still raw. Sophia became the mother figure. I needed someone who celebrated my ambition rather than trying to temper it. My social circle expanded too. I joined a women in tech group where I met Aisha, Lydia, and Rachel, all founders facing similar challenges. Our Tuesday dinner meetups became sacred spaces where we could vent frustrations, share advice, and celebrate wins without explanation or apology. They understood my journey in ways my blood family never could. As SupplySync grew, so did my relationship with Jackson. He had been there through the hardest parts of my estrangement, holding me through tears and rage without judgment. On a weekend trip to Vermont, as we hiked to a mountain overlook, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. "I want to build a family with you," he said based on acceptance and support, where we celebrate each other's dreams instead of constraining them. I said yes, through happy tears, the ring on my finger, a symbol not just of love, but of a new beginning. We planned a small wedding, intimate and meaningful, with the people who had chosen to be part of my journey. Sophia would officiate. My team from SupplySync would attend. My Tuesday dinner group would be my bridesmaids. There was a moment addressing wedding invitations when Jackson gently asked if I wanted to invite my parents. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. "They made their choice," I said finally. "I don't think a wedding invitation can bridge that gap." He nodded understanding, without needing further explanation. That was one of the countless reasons I loved him, his ability to accept my decisions without questioning whether I was sure, without suggesting family was too important to cut off completely. The wedding was everything. I could have wanted a celebration of love and connection that had nothing to do with obligation or tradition. We wrote our own vows, danced until dawn, and felt truly surrounded by love. If there was a small ache for what should have been for parents, who should have watched their daughter walk down the aisle, that ache was overshadowed by gratitude for the family we had created. Grandmother Eleanor's death had left a hole in my heart that couldn't be filled, but I honored her memory by establishing a scholarship in her name for young women pursuing STEM education from my hometown. It felt like the right way to continue her legacy of quiet support and belief in potential. Throughout this period, I also began therapy with Dr. Taylor, a compassionate woman who specialized in family estrangement. Our sessions helped me process the complex grief of losing my family while they were still alive. What your parents did was a form of conditional love, she explained. They loved the version of you they wanted, not the person you actually are. That's not real love, May. Real love allows people to grow and change. Those sessions were often painful, dredging up memories I'd tried to suppress, but they were necessary for healing. I learned to acknowledge the anger and hurt without letting it consume me. I practiced setting boundaries without guilt. Most importantly, I began to see that the rejection wasn't about my worth, but about my parents' limitations. The business continued to thrive through all these personal developments. We secured another round of funding, allowing us to develop an artificial intelligence component that revolutionized our platform. Industry publications began featuring SupplySync as an example of innovative supply chain management. I was invited to speak at conferences, sharing our journey and vision. Each success felt like a vindication proof that I had made the right choice in following my path despite my family's disapproval. But more importantly, each success was shared with people who genuinely celebrated with me without conditions or caveats. By the 5th anniversary of founding SupplySync, I had created something remarkable, both a thriving company and a chosen family who loved me for exactly who I was. The pain of rejection had gradually transformed into appreciation for the freedom to build a life on my own terms. I had no way of knowing then that my carefully constructed peace was about to be tested in ways I couldn't imagine. 7 years after graduation, SupplySync had transformed from a scrappy startup into an industry leader. We had offices in Boston, San Francisco, and Chicago, with over 200 employees, and a client list that included some of the biggest names in retail and manufacturing. Our AI-driven supply chain management system had revolutionized how businesses handled inventory and distribution, earning us features in Forbes Business Insider and TechCrunch. The acquisition offer came from one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world. After weeks of negotiations, we agreed to terms that exceeded my wildest expectations. I would stay on as CEO of SupplySync now, a division of the larger company with resources to expand our vision even further. The night after signing the papers, Jackson and I celebrated in our apartment, toasting with champagne and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. "Can you believe how far we've come?" he asked, his eyes shining with pride. I thought about that tiny studio apartment, the ramen noodle dinners, the nights of doubt and fear. Sometimes I can't, but mostly am just grateful. With the financial security from the acquisition, we decided it was time to put down more permanent roots. We found a stunning property in Seattle, a modern mansion overlooking the water with floor-to-ceiling windows and enough space to grow into. The house represented everything it achieved, a physical manifestation of success built entirely on my own terms. The move to Seattle coincided with another major life change. After careful consideration, Jackson and I decided we were ready to start a family. After a few months of trying, I discovered I was pregnant. The joy of creating this new life, a family formed in love and acceptance, felt like the final piece of a puzzle I'd been working on for years. During all this time, I had no contact with my parents or brother. The complete estrangement had lasted over 3 years at this point. No birthday calls, no holiday cards, no congratulatory messages about business successes that made national news. The silence was absolute and surprisingly peaceful. Id stopped looking for their validation and found contentment in the life Id built. Occasionally, through mutual connections from my hometown, I would hear snippets of information. Patrick had gone through a messy divorce after his wife discovered his gambling problem. The family insurance agency was struggling in the changing economy. My parents had retired earlier than planned, their financial situation apparently not as secure as they'd hoped. These pieces of news no longer triggered the guilt or concern they might have years earlier. I had learned through therapy and experience that I wasn't responsible for solving my family's problems, especially when they had so clearly rejected me. It might sound cold, but it was a necessary boundary for my own well-being. As my pregnancy progressed, Jackson and I transformed one of the mansion's rooms into a nursery. We chose a space with morning light and views of the garden, painting it in soothing greens and setting up a comfortable rocking chair where I imagined reading to our child. Unlike the home I grew up in, with its strict rules and conditional acceptance, our home would be a place of creativity, support, and unconditional love. During this period, I also established the May Walker Foundation for Girls in Technology. The foundation provided mentorship equipment and educational opportunities for young women interested in STEM careers, particularly those from communities with limited resources. It was my way of creating the support system I wished Id had as a young girl taking apart computers in my bedroom. One evening, as I reviewed applications for the Foundation's scholarship program, I came across one from a girl in my hometown. Her essay mentioned the limited opportunities there and the resistance she faced from family who didn't understand her passion for coding. The parallels to my own experience were striking. Reading her words brought a wave of complex emotions, not regret for the path Id chosen, but a renewed awareness of what Id had to sacrifice along the way. I approved her application immediately, hoping the support might make her journey a little easier than mine had been. At 6 months pregnant, I was featured in a major business magazine discussing both SupplySync's innovations and the Foundation's work. The article included a photo of me in our Seattle home hand resting on my pregnant belly, the water view visible through windows behind me. The headline read, "Redefining Success: How May Walker Built a Tech Empire and a Life on Her Own Terms." A week after the article was published, I received an email from an old family friend. "Your parents saw the magazine piece," she wrote. "Your father asked about you." I didn't respond. If my parents wanted to reach out, they knew how to find me. A second-hand message through a mutual acquaintance wasn't communication, it was surveillance. As my due date approached, Jackson and I settled into a peaceful routine in our Seattle home. We attended birthing classes, interviewed pediatricians, and spent weekends walking along the waterfront discussing names and dreams for our child's future. The nursery was complete, a serene space awaiting its tiny occupant. The contrast between the home I was creating and the one I had grown up in couldn't have been more stark. Where my childhood home had been rigid with expectations and conditions, this home was built on a foundation of acceptance and growth. The family Jackson and I were creating would have different values: compassion over conformity, support over control love, without strings attached. In therapy sessions with Dr. Taylor, now conducted via video calls, I worked through my feelings about becoming a parent while estranged from my own. "I'm afraid I'll repeat patterns," I admitted during one session. "Even when we try to be different from our parents, sometimes those behaviors are so deeply ingrained." Dr. Taylor nodded thoughtfully. "Being aware of those patterns is the first step to breaking them. You've already shown tremendous insight by recognizing what was harmful in your upbringing. That awareness will guide your parenting choices." Her words reassured me, but the fears lingered. Parenthood is a journey into the unknown, even under the best circumstances. Doing it without the guidance of my own parents added another layer of complexity. What I didn't know then, as I prepared for our baby's arrival, was that my estrangement was about to be tested in the most unexpected way. The peaceful life I'd built so carefully separated from my past was about to collide with it head-on, bringing all the unresolved pain and tension back to the surface. The doorbell that Sunday morning would change everything. That Sunday morning began like any other in our Seattle mansion. The early spring sunshine filtered through the floor to ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across our open-concept living room. At 7 months pregnant, I had developed a routine of slow mornings with herbal tea, watching the water from our terrace, while Jackson made his famous blueberry pancakes. I was sitting at our kitchen island laptop open, as I reviewed the latest application numbers for the Foundation Scholarship Program, when Jackson placed a stack of pancakes in front of me. "What color should we paint the accent wall in the nursery?" he asked, refilling my tea. I was thinking maybe that soft yellow we saw at the design store. I smiled, grateful for his enthusiasm about every detail of preparing for our child. Not too bright, though. I wanted to feel calm. We fell into easy conversation about nursery plans, baby names, and the upcoming meeting with the pediatrician we hoped would care for our child. These peaceful moments had become precious to me, evidence of the stable, loving home we were creating. The sharp ring of our doorbell cut through our conversation, startling us both. We weren't expecting any deliveries, and our friends knew to call before dropping by, especially on a Sunday morning. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Are we expecting someone?" I shook my head, reaching for my phone to check our security app. When the front door camera image loaded, I froze the phone, nearly slipping from my suddenly numb fingers. Standing on our doorstep, looking older but unmistakable, were my parents. Thomas and Diane Walker, the people I hadn't seen or spoken to in over 3 years, were at my home. My father was shifting nervously from foot to foot, while my mother was smoothing her hair. The same gesture I remembered from childhood, her preparation before any public appearance. My heart began racing, the room spinning slightly. 8 years since they had excluded me from family gatherings, 3 years of complete silence, and now they were here unannounced, uninvited, standing at the threshold of the life I had built without them. Jackson saw my expression and immediately came to my side, looking at the phone screen. His arm wrapped protectively around me. "May, what do you want to do?" he asked quietly. No judgment in his voice, just support. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths, the way Dr. Taylor had taught me to handle panic attacks. The old May would have either hidden or rushed to open the door, desperate for reconciliation at any cost. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I'll talk to them," I decided, my voice steadier than I expected. "But I need a minute." Jackson squeezed my shoulder. "Take all the time you need. I'll be right here if you want me to come with you, or I can stay back, whatever you need." This was what real support looked like. A partner who empowered me to make my own decisions without pushing his agenda. The contrast with my parents' approach couldn't have been sharper. I took a few more deep breaths, centering myself. I was May Walker, CEO of Supply Sync, founder of a nonprofit foundation, soon to be mother and creator of my own destiny. Their approval or disapproval no longer defined me. With each step toward the front door, I mentally prepared myself. I expected the familiar feelings of inadequacy and guilt to surface, but instead found a surprising calm. My hand didn't shake as I reached for the doorknob. Opening the door, I faced my parents directly. They looked smaller, somehow less intimidating than in my memory. Dad's hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines framed Mom's mouth. They both stared at me with wide eyes, taking in my pregnant belly, the expansive foyer behind me, the obvious evidence of my success. May my mother said, her voice faltering slightly. "You look, well." My father cleared his throat. "We were in the area for a medical conference. Thought we'd stop by." The lie was so transparent it would have been funny under different circumstances. My parents had traveled across the country, not stopped by while coincidentally in Seattle. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and neutral. "This is unexpected." They exchanged glances, clearly thrown off by my composure. Perhaps they had expected tears either of joy at their appearance or lingering hurt from their rejection. My calm confidence wasn't in their script. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" Mom asked, attempting to regain control of the situation with her usual social propriety. I considered this request carefully. This was my home, my safe space. Did I want to allow them entry after everything that had happened? "You can come in for a few minutes," I decided. "I have appointments later today." This was another small boundary. Not a whole day. Not open-ended hospitality, just a brief conversation with clear time limits. They followed me into the living room, their eyes darting around, taking in the high ceilings, modern art, and panoramic views. Mom's lips pursed slightly, as she always did, when making mental calculations about someone's financial status. "Quite a place you've got here," Dad said, attempting casual conversation while clearly stunned by the evident wealth. "Must have cost a fortune." "We like it," I replied, simply choosing not to engage with the implied question about money. "Would you like some tea?" After settling them on the sofa with tea, neither would drink. I sat across from them, one hand resting protectively on my belly. "So," I said after an awkward silence, "what brings you to Seattle?" They exchanged another look, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Dad leaned forward, adopting what I recognized as his business negotiation posture. "Family should stick together." May he began as if the years of exclusion and silence had never happened. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking." Some reflecting Mom added her voice, taking on the gentle tone shed use when trying to convince me to wear a dress to church instead of pants. I waited, not filling the silence, not making it easier for them. Dad continued, "The family business has hit some rough patches. The economy, new regulations, you know how it is. And then there's Patrick's situation." Mom jumped in. "Your brother made some mistakes. The gambling, debts, the divorce. It's been hard on everyone. Hez staying with us now, trying to get back on his feet." I nodded, but remained silent, already seeing where this was heading. "We saw that article about your company, Dad," said his tone, shifting to something almost proud, as if he had any right to pride in achievements he had dismissed and belittled. "Quite impressive what you've built." "Always knew you were smart." The audacity of that statement might have made me laugh if it wasn't so painful. Always knew I was smart. After years of undermining my choices, dismissing my career, and treating my success as a phase to outgrow, the real purpose of their visit became clear as Mom gestured around the room. "With all this success, we thought maybe you might want to help the family. Patrick needs a fresh start, and the business needs modernization. Who better than our tech genius daughter to help?" There it was, the reason for their sudden appearance. After 8 years of excluding me from family gatherings, 3 years of complete silence. Not reconciliation, not genuine remorse, not even a desire to meet their future grandchild. They wanted money. I looked at these people who had raised me, who had shaped my early years with their expectations and conditions, who had cut me out when I didn't conform to their vision. And for the first time, I saw them clearly, not as the powerful authorities of my childhood, but as flawed, limited people unable to grow beyond their narrow worldview. In that moment of clarity, I felt an unexpected emotion, not anger, not hurt, but a profound pity. I took a slow, deliberate breath before responding to my parents' thinly veiled request for financial assistance. The weight of our history hung between us, but I no longer felt crushed by it. Before we discuss anything about money, I said calmly, I need to address something important. It's been 8 years since you started excluding me from family gatherings. 3 years since we've spoken at all. No calls on my birthday, no congratulations on my business success, no contact whatsoever. My mother shifted uncomfortably, smoothing her skirt. We've all been busy, May. You with your company, us with family matters. That's not what happened, I continued, my voice steady. You systematically cut me out because I chose a path you didn't approve of. You punished me for my independence by withdrawing your love and support. And now you're here not because you miss me or want to reconcile, but because you need something from me. Dad's face flushed. Now that's not entirely fair. It is fair, I interrupted gently, and it's important that we acknowledge the truth if we're going to have any kind of relationship moving forward. I placed both hands on my belly, drawing strength from the life growing inside me. I've spent years in therapy processing the pain of your rejection. I've built a wonderful life with people who support me unconditionally. I'm about to become a mother myself, which has made me think deeply about what family truly means. My mother's eyes darted to my pregnant belly, perhaps truly seeing it for the first time. You never told us you were expecting. You never gave me a way to tell you, I replied simply. You chose to cut off communication. In the silence that followed, Jackson appeared in the doorway, a silent question in his eyes. I nodded slightly, and he came to sit beside me, taking my hand in quiet support. This is my husband Jackson, I said. We've been married for 2 years. Neither of my parents congratulated us, or even acknowledged the introduction properly. Instead, my father cleared his throat and attempted to redirect the conversation. The past is the past, May. What matters now is family coming together in times of need. Patrick has made mistakes, but he's blood. The business has been in our family for generations. I nodded slowly. I understand family is important to you, but family isn't just blood. It's how we treat each other. It's showing up consistently, not just when you need something. So you won't help. My mother's voice took on the familiar, disappointed tone that had once devastated me. Now I recognized it as manipulation. I didn't say that, I clarified. I'm willing to forgive what happened. Not forget, but forgive. If you want to rebuild a relationship with me, with us, I'm open to that process. It would need to be gradual with clear boundaries and mutual respect. I paused, making sure my next words were perfectly clear. But I won't be providing financial assistance as a condition of reconciliation. That's not how healthy families work. My father's face darkened. After everything we did for you, the sacrifices we made, raising you, I'm grateful for the good parts of my childhood, I acknowledged. But parents are supposed to care for their children without expecting repayment. That's what I'll do for my child. You always were stubborn, my father said, standing abruptly. Too independent for your own good. I told your mother this was a waste of time. My mother rose more slowly, tears welling in her eyes. Whether they were genuine or another manipulation tactic, I couldn't be sure. If you change your mind about helping family, she said, her voice wavering, you know how to reach us. And if you change your mind about wanting a genuine relationship with your daughter and grandchild, I replied evenly, you know how to reach me too. Jackson and I walked them to the door. As they stepped outside, my father turned back, his expression hardening. Your grandmother would be disappointed in you, he said. A final attempt to wound me where I was most vulnerable. Instead of crumbling, I smiled sadly. Grandma Eleanor told me before she died that she was proud of me for finding my own path. I think she'd be proud of me today, too, for setting healthy boundaries while keeping the door open for healing. Without another word, they walked to their rental car and drove away. I stood in the doorway, Jackson's arm around my waist, watching until they disappeared from view. Are you okay? He asked gently. I considered the question carefully. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. I really am. What amazed me most was how little their departure hurt. The pain I had anticipated never materialized. Instead, I felt a profound sense of peace, of closure. I had faced my deepest fear confronting my parents and emerged stronger, clearer about who I was and what mattered to me. In the weeks that followed, I reflected on the encounter during my therapy sessions with Dr. Taylor. You set boundaries without anger, she observed. That's tremendous growth, May. It felt different than I expected, I admitted. I always thought seeing them again would reopen all those old wounds, but instead, I just felt free. That's because you've done the work, she explained. You've built your identity separate from their approval. Their opinion is no longer the measure of your worth. 2 months later, our daughter was born. We named her Eleanor after the grandmother who had believed in me when no one else did. Holding her in my arms, I made a silent promise that she would always know her worth wasn't tied to my expectations. She would be loved for exactly who she was, not for who I wanted her to be. I sent my parents a birth announcement, a small olive branch extending from my position of strength, not desperation. They sent a polite card in return. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation, but it was a start, a tiny opening that might someday widen into something more meaningful. Over the next year, our communication remained minimal but civil. They occasionally asked about Eleanor and sent her gifts on her birthday. I shared photos and updates, but maintained clear boundaries about visits and involvement. It was a delicate balance, allowing them some connection without giving them power to hurt me again. Meanwhile, the family Jackson and I created flourished. Our home was filled with laughter, creativity, and unconditional love. The May Walker Foundation expanded its reach, now supporting young women across the country in pursuing tech education and careers. Supply Sync continued to grow and innovate under my leadership, becoming an industry standard. I also reconnected with certain extended family members, cousins and aunts, who reached out separately, apologizing for their role in my exclusion and expressing genuine interest in my life. These relationships were rebuilt carefully on new foundations of mutual respect. Looking back on my journey from that small Pennsylvania town to my Seattle mansion, from seeking approval to finding self-acceptance, I realized the most valuable lesson wasn't about success or even resilience. It was about redefining family on my own terms. Family isn't always the people who share your DNA. Sometimes it's the mentor who believes in your vision when your parents dismiss it. It's the friends who celebrate your victories without envy. It's the partner who supports your autonomy instead of trying to control it. And it's the child you raise with the determination to break unhealthy patterns. The strength to create boundaries isn't coldness, it's self-respect. The courage to walk away from conditional love isn't selfishness, it's survival. And the ability to forgive without forgetting isn't weakness, it's wisdom. My door remains open to my parents, but only on terms that honor my worth and well-being. Whether they ever choose to walk through it on those terms is their decision. Either way, I am whole, I am loved, and I am enough. If you're watching this and struggling with family rejection or conditional acceptance, please know that you deserve to be loved for who you truly are, not for who others want you to be. Creating boundaries isn't giving up on family. It's giving yourself the chance to heal and build a life that reflects your authentic self. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? How did you handle reconciliation on your own terms? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for listening to my journey. I hope it brings comfort to anyone walking a similar path.